So our journey has brought us to a steeper snow slope here, and it may be a member of your party who's feeling less confident or looking less competent, and so there's various ways we can provide a bit of security with them. So we're going to have a look now at a snow belay using the rope. And the thing that we're going to have to do, because we're on an open snow slope, is we're going to dig a bucket seat. And the clue is in the name, really. We want a bucket that we're really sat inside of. So it's going to take a bit of digging, and the principle of moving snow into space is going to be really important to us here. When you dig, you take snow away, you then need to move snow into that space. If you don't do it like that, it's going to be hard work and not very efficient. What Paul needs here is a ledge. We're going to get him stood with some security so that then I have time to think about how to create my bucket seat. So we're going to just chop away at the snow here, move the snow into space. Just a word of warning, really. When you are digging, the snow gets harder usually as you descend through the snow pack. It tends to grab your axe. Without your leash on, there's a danger it'll get yanked away from you. So hold on really tight, and also be very aware of where that pick is going in relation to your face. If you're working closely together, an accident can occur quite quickly. So Paul's got his ledge now, and we're happy he's not going to take an unexpected slip or slide down the slope. Okay, so I've left Paul down on his ledge, and I've come up the slope now to dig the bucket seat, which is the first part of this procedure. And it's going to have to be a fairly big shape, really. It's going to have to get me and my rucksack in it. I prefer to keep my rucksack on rather than take it on and off on steep snow slopes where there's a risk of losing it. So I'm going to have to have some order to this, or we'll have snow everywhere and I won't really know where I'm at. I'm going to make a big shape in the snow to begin with. I think probably my elbow's a guide for me here. I'm going to draw a semicircle. And so what I'm drawing on this line here is going to be the front face of my bucket. And in a bucket seat, it's very important that the front face is perpendicular to the slope, so at right angles to the slope. So I'm going to be trying to cut away at about the angle my axe is on currently. Again, it's pulling snow into space, so we're going to start at the bottom and work backwards. There's going to be a lot of digging, so we need to conserve our energy. Every now and then when you've been digging a while, it's going to be important just to remind yourself where that front face is and that you've still got a good angle on it. So keep cleaning it out and having a look at that. Make sure you're not losing track of where that front face is, because that's where all the security is going to come from. We're getting to about the right depth now, so I'm going to jump in and just give it a try. So I know it's the right depth if my knee is catching on the edge of the front face there, and I know it's the right depth behind me if I don't feel like I'm pushed forward onto my knees. So there are two ways I could make this a bit stronger. Really, the first way, I want to get my heels and my crampon points digging into some snow there, so that I feel like I've got some resistance from feet and thighs. And the second way is to perhaps involve the use of the ice axe. So if I make a trench above me and bury this axe, it'll reinforce the strength of my bucket seat. So to find the place where I'm going to reinforce my bucket seat with my axe, I'm going to stand in my bucket, I'm going to reach my arm forwards, and in a line with the slope and my bucket, I'm going to make a mark. And since the strength of all this relies on the integrity of the snow in front of it, I'm going to do my best not to damage any of that. So I'm going to now come out my bucket seat and go around to work from the side. Okay, refined my mark, and I need a line across the slope. Now there's a difference here to the way I dug my bucket seat. The key difference here is that I want to bury my axe in a horizontal position, but the crack it's going down into the snow in, I'm going to dig vertically downwards. So, not worried about the angle of the snow anymore. Simply trying to dig straight down. Try and keep this slot as narrow as you can, so some accurate chopping is required. Okay, so my slot is progressing well. A bit like the bucket seat, I'm keeping an eye on the front face and making sure I'm looking after the angle there. Remember, straight down is where I was trying to get to. And I'm trying to get down into a hard layer, which I've managed to get into just here. So now it's time to just draw a line down to my bucket seat, because the two of us need to be attached. I'm going to be in a bucket seat. I'm going to bring a rope up and clip it to my axe. And because I don't want my axe lifted out of that hole, I'm going to have to reduce the leverage by creating another slot. So see how your axe sits down in the slot there, and when you bring it out, we're looking to find the balance point. It'll be somewhere down the shaft there, and that gives us the idea that in terms of surface area of axe, we've got an equal amount on both sides, and that is where we need to attach ourselves to. So when I place that back in its slot, I'm keeping that mark visible. I know I need to make my vertical slot towards my bucket from there. I'm going to keep this one very narrow indeed. I'm having to use the spike of my axe there because it's quite deep in that slot. But I obviously need to gently taper outwards so that it comes to the surface somewhere above my bucket. So just trying to ease that into a gentle gradient so that it's all going downhill from my axe. Okay, it was awkward digging that slot as narrow as I have, but as I mentioned earlier, it's all about the integrity of the snow around these parts. To keep that strong, I need to keep this strong. So we're trying to keep things quite narrow down this channel. So I've got the rope out now. I definitely don't want that trailing all down the snow, so I've made a little hole to keep all that in while I work. And I've got a trusty sling and crab. It makes life so much easier when you've got one of these around. The way I like to attach the sling and crab to my axe is to make a clove hitch. Now, clove hitches are not knots, they're hitches, so they pull tight when you pull on them. And I'm going to use it in the way which I know it'll pull the tightest when I pull on it. Again, I'm aiming for that balance point of the axe. Let me just down a little. And then I'm going to sink that into its slot. Pack that down and keep the axe against the front face of the slot that you made, and make sure the sling is pulled tight have a look at your vertical slot and just check the sling's not riding up over any rises that could force a bit of leverage on the axe. Back down into your bucket. And this is the awkward bit really, because I'm going to be sat down in this hole and I need a certain amount of rope to get me there, so it's sometimes hard to get that quite right. I'm going to make a bit of a guesstimate that that is going to be okay. The hole's filled in a bit during all this, so I'm just going to scoop out some of the loose. Now I feel like I'm secure. Myself and Paul are now attached to each end of the rope, and it's time to give Paul the security required. So I'm going to use my body for that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a loop of rope over my back. Now, this is kind of awkward to arrange. If it ends up at your neck, it's no good at all. So what we're looking to do is to settle it right down at our kidneys, and you may well have to just budge out of your seat in order to make that happen. Once I've got the rope arranged around my kidney level, we're then good to go. And we need to remind ourselves which side of the rope is which. On the rope that goes to Paul, we've got a live body on the end, so I'm going to call that the live rope. And on the other end, I'm going to call it a dead rope. I'm going to take a wrap around my arm on the dead rope to give me the control I need. There's a bit of friction as the rope goes around my rucksack on my back, but I'm going to give a little bit extra by wrapping it around that arm on the dead rope side. The security here comes from having no slack. So the rope behind me is tight, the rope to Paul must be tight. And it takes a little bit of practice to get the motor skills involved in dragging that rope around your back and placing it into your catching hand on the live rope. You can also get in a tangle around your feet, so occasionally stop your partner and just have a little tidy up. Always keeping your hand wrapped around that dead rope. In case of a slip or a slide, I will go into the braking position, which will be to increase the friction around my body like so. I will do very little with the live end of the rope. The control comes from here. Just stop 1 second please, Paul. And stop again please. Okay, so as Paul approaches the belay, we need to start thinking about a safe changeover. And I'm not going to detach myself until Paul is attached and safely in the bucket. As Paul gets to the belay above me, he's going to snap his own carabiner in and clove-hitch himself to that buried axe that we've got back there.
Okay, I'm clipped in.
Once he's safely clipped in, the belay can come off. Okay. What you'll learn now is that the rope is the wrong way up. For me to shoot off up the slope, I'll be pulling the rope from the bottom of the pile, and it would ensue a lot of tangling. So we're just going to quickly turn the rope around so that my bit's coming off the top of the pile. There's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the trader position successfully completed, Paul's now ready to belay me up the slope, and I'm short of one piece of equipment because my axe is buried, so I'll be stealing Paul's for this job, and obviously Paul will then retrieve the axe that's buried when he makes the ascent and the rope is tight on him. Once we know Paul is ready, the rope is around his waist. He's taken the precaution of putting his hood up so that all the stuff that I scatter down isn't going to go down his neck. It's very important that I go up on his live side. I'm not going to fall off this, but we have to bear in mind a what if. And if I do take a slide, I definitely want to slide down on the live rope side so that he's got a chance of controlling me with his dead rope arm. Now I'm on belay, I can come off my clove hitch and make the ascent to the top.